The Aware Project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully cross all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
I am going to invite up our speakers this evening. I'm very excited. So Amalesh and Lauren, would you come up? And I'm so excited that we found you guys because I've been wanting to do a talk on Kratom for a very long time because I don't know very much about it, and so I'll just get someone to tell me about it and then invite all my friends. So I'm just so happy to have you guys here, and yeah, I'll let you guys take it away.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So I've really enjoyed the evening so far. It's been a great get to know you time. Had some great conversation. I love that we can sit down with some food and talk about ideas and ways to collaborate and get together. So thank you, Aware Project, for putting these events together. It's been amazing for me being new to LA the last year and a half to get together with the community and learn about interesting things. And Amalesh and I met at an Aware Project where Greg Lawrence gave a presentation on microdosing boba with cannabis. And Amalesh asked an interesting question, and I was actually working with Greg on that project for a while. And so he and I hit it off, and we started talking about Kratom, and next thing you know, we're sitting here on the stage talking about Kratom. And it's been excellent. Like, just the time that we've spent together preparing for this presentation has been very enlightening. We've worked together many, many evenings now, and just continuing to research Kratom has been pretty mind-blowing. Right?
Yeah.
We've continued to learn, even though we have our personal experiences through this process, we've learned even more about Kratom. And so we'll go into our personal stories in a little bit, but yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight.
Yeah, Kratom's helped me a lot the last year and a couple of months, basically. And so I just have so much respect for this plant. It's very powerful. And I felt like the plant did me so many favors that I want to give back to the plant. And so I'm sitting here and being a voice for the plant, I suppose. Anything else in the intro department, Amalesh?
Yeah, I think that covers everything. I guess maybe raise your hand if you've done Kratom before. Okay, cool. And then raise your hand if you've just heard about Kratom.
All right, about half an hour.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Just so you know, Amalesh is the science guy with Kratom, which is awesome. He's the science guy and a lot of social experience, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, next slide, please. Don't have any preview. And that's our name, Lauren and Amalesh.
That's us.
Next slide. All right, so we're just going to go in the basics here, a little history and background about Kratom in this first section. So,
Cool. So Kratom, also known as Mytragina speciosa, is a tree in the coffee family, in the Rubiaceae family. So that includes coffee. It also includes chacruna, which is the DMT containing part of ayahuasca brews. So that's also in the Rubiaceae family, as well as Kratom. I say Kratom. A lot of other people say Kratom, so bear with the discrepancy.
it's the same plant.
It's the same plant, yeah. So Kratom is in that same family, along with many, many other plants. But that's just an interesting connection there. And so next slide. Cool. So Kratom originates in Southeast Asia, and we'll go into all the different countries, I think, on the next slide. But it's used traditionally there by laborers mostly, people who have to spend all day in the field or working on building things, or just, people have to use their body a lot, do a lot of labor. And it really helps with things like fatigue and pain and stamina and stuff like that. So in some ways it's kind of like a coffee, you can compare it to sort of like the stimulant use of coffee, but it has a lot of other benefits too, not just increasing alertness and stuff. So it's used, I guess, most often traditionally by laborers, although that is changing now, that it's entering the Western market, and people are using it for a lot of different things, but traditionally mostly used for pain, fatigue, digestion, mood, motivation. So that's kind of where it's coming from there. And then I think also there is medicinal history of usage in Southeast Asia. I know it's listed in a lot of Chinese medicine pharmacopoeias, and I think even I remember hearing that in Chinese medicine it was used to treat malaria. So there are more medicinal applications too. So next slide. Cool. So yeah, these are the countries where it grows native. And so it's often found either on plantations now because people are producing it for the Western market, but originally it would just grow in wild jungles essentially. And people living nearby would pick the leaves and then prepare the drink on the roadside, and then people would come buy the drink. And so traditionally how it would be done. Also, people will just actually pick a straight up leaf and just chew on it. That's another super common method. And then here, I was going to show you, this is what we get in the States is just a ground up powder. And we're going to pass that around too.
So this is the ground up powder, and I also have some leaves that you can make tea from. So this is the step before the powder. So these leaves get ground into powder. So I thought I'd pass it around and let everyone take a peek. It's very bitter.
Are we allowed to sample?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a controlled substance. So just
Yep. So I'm going to take a little bit myself.
He does it in different ways. Very, very great. We'll go into the different ways of administering it, but essentially I like to mix it with juice or cocoa or coffee or something else because it's very bitter. But this is the method I'll narrate. It's called toss and wash.
Well, actually, I'm doing something slightly different.
Oh, okay.
So this is a method I've pioneered in the last year or so, and essentially you're just dipping it like chewing tobacco. Oh. So you just take a tiny bit and then put it in your lip.
Good luck explaining this now.
And then now you have a different powder. And I have water. So that's another method.
Yep.
Doesn't taste great.
He's very brave. One time we were hanging out and he's like, would you like some Kratom? I'm like, actually I would. Half a teaspoon. And he just put it in water, like a lot of water, just handed it to me. And I'm like, this is gross. I don't really want to drink it. Where's the orange juice or something sweeter? People put it in capsules too, though.
Yeah, you can capsulate it.
Go over that.
But I feel like this is probably the closest way that I can get to traditionally just chewing on a leaf. So that's kind of why I like it. And I do notice that the effects come on quicker. I don't have to take as much. It doesn't have to pass through my digestive system. So that's just one way.
Thanks for the demo.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Southeast Asia, it grows endemically in all the forests in Thailand, Malaysia, Bali, Indonesia, Borneo, Sumatra, Java, Papua New Guinea. I think it also grows in Vietnam and the Philippines, I believe, too.
Side note on that, there is another strain of kratom that's a little bit different, that's grown in some other countries like Australia. So there's
That's
a derivative of it as well. We didn't include it because it's not technically exactly this
Yeah.
species, but there are.
I think there are several related species, but just none of them have quite the same medicinal punch as Kratom does. Cool. Anything else to add for that?
Well, someone asked me earlier, how do you grow it and why can't we grow it here? And my first response is the humidity level has to be extremely high for it to grow. It's very humid.
It's like a subtropical plant. And then I've also heard that it has very, very specific soil requirements. So people have tried to get plantations going here, but most of them seem to fail just within while the plant's still really young. It's just very, very picky on its soil conditions. But hopefully we'll figure that out more. But as of yet, I don't know of any major plantations in the US. It's all being imported, mostly from Indonesia. That's where most of it comes from. Cool, next slide. Oh yeah, cool. So, Kratom, especially in the last, I guess, century, has sort of entered into this murky realm of being a psychoactive substance, or being a medicinal substance, or being just a recreational supplement on the Western market. So all of that has put it into this sort of stigmatized taboo category of things. And there's a lot of just sort of controversy, confusion about it right now, because it has been in the media. And I guess even in its home countries, there is still that controversy around it, although the history of that we'll go into a little bit later is a little bit sketchy. But even in the countries where it is endemic to, there is some stigma around its use, depending on which part of society you're coming from. And even in Thailand, it's illegal, and Malaysia, it's illegal, but it does just grow in the forest there, so they have a hard time enforcing that. So let's see, yeah, it is medicinal, and of course, it has thousands and thousands of years of traditional usage, but none of that has really been documented very well. So, people want to claim that it might be a new scary drug, but really it has been used by humans for thousands of years. And the people who do use it traditionally, they have an understanding that it's a medicinal plant. It's good for the uses they use it for, but the governments and people trying to control those people see it differently. And so yeah, they've made it illegal. I guess Vietnam, it's illegal too. And then in the U.S., some states in the last maybe 5 years or so have also made it illegal, and those include Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Tennessee, Vermont, and the last one.
It's Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay.
And the slides are cut off.
And then Sarasota County, I guess, and then San Diego definitely has a city ordinance against
San
it.
Diego. The rest of the state is
fine.
fine.
So beware when you're in San Diego, I guess.
Odd.
Yep. Anything else to add there?
At the bottom of the slide, the last bullet point is, you'll probably talk even more to this, but.
Yeah, we're going to get into that more, but it is, the legal status of Kratom is threatened right now, and I'll get into the details of that in a sec. Cool, next slide.
Oh, introduction.
Yep. Okay, cool.
I'm very.
Yeah, it's
Good thing we have it memorized.
Yep. Okay, cool. So, the history I was mentioning about in Thailand, so I guess it was back in 1943, Thailand passed the Anti-Kratom Act, and this was all couched, of course, in concern for public safety. They're trying to get rid of another drug, but once you look into the history of that time, it was actually the government of Thailand was trying to make kratom illegal because it was a huge competition with opium at the time, and I think the British had a huge role in selling a lot of opium and getting a lot of taxes from that. And so people who were addicted to opium, using a lot of opium, would use kratom instead, and that would be a huge loss in profits for people. So that's most likely the real reasoning behind why Thailand made it illegal. And that's actually pretty reminiscent of the situation we're in right now with kratom and the DEA. So I'll get into that a little bit later too. Yep. Next slide. Oh yeah, fun fact too.
Oh, sure.
Cool.
I put the little hat next to the leaf. When it was, we say that the plant was discovered in, what was it, 1970 something? Like 1834. Clearly the plant's been around longer than that. That's just the date that the first white man discovered it and documented it. And he gave it a name after the mitre hat of the bishop, because when you hold a leaf up, it's very tall and it has a pointy top, and it looks a lot like the bishop hat. Lucky for us, it showed up on the presentation, but you can see how we might get that idea. Yeah, I still can't pronounce it. Mytragina. 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 Thank you. What I do about you. Next slide, please. Okay, so essentially there are 3 colors of kratom veins. And so the actual leaf, you saw the picture, and the veins that run through the middle of the plant are different colors. Oh, hey. Can you Alt-Tab, please? Alt-Tab. Is there anybody clicking? Oh, yeah. There you go. All right. So just about most of the kratom is actually of the red vein category, but there is also white vein kratom, and there is green vein kratom. And then there's yellow vein kratom, which is just kind of a combination of the reds and greens and whites. But I like to put it there because it does get classified as its own color these days. So most of it is red. Red is best known for its pain relieving properties, especially at larger dosages. It's still actually pretty stimulating at smaller dosages. I know I've taken it for pain, like my back was hurting, I took it at smaller dosages, and I found that I was pretty awake. So wait a second. Maybe I just feel that my pain's gone and I'm awake, but in smaller doses it actually is pretty stimulating. It's the most common kind, and that's the one you would lean on, the red vein kratom, if you were dealing with an opioid or opiate withdrawal syndrome. The white is known for energy, depression, anxiety, mood, creativity, and confidence. In my last year, I've had some white in the morning time. It's really good for me. I'll put just a little bit in my coffee or tea, juice. And I definitely have a new appreciation of the morning. I feel more vibrant and alive and awake and just kind of more like myself, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of brighter, I guess you would say. Just feel brighter. The green is actually pretty popular. It's pretty well known. It's also good at pain. It is immune boosting, so there's an immune boosting benefit to the green strain. And so we're going to go into all the different alkaloids that are involved, and each strain and each leaf type have different alkaloids in them, and each alkaloid does different things. The kratom plant can have up to 40 different alkaloids in it. And so it's hard to know exactly which alkaloids are going to be in the one you get, but if you can pick the specific color, at least you're going to get into the right area. And then when you get to know the plants a little bit better, you're like, oh, I want to put a little bit of white with a little bit of green. The green's also anti-inflammatory. I use green for like an antitussive, like when I've had an upper respiratory infection, it's been very helpful. So you kind of make your own blends over time. You know, I would say get a red, a white, and a green, and then kind of make your own as you go, blend according to your needs. And yellow is supposed to be more relaxing than any of them. it's fermented of the other colors. Something we didn't put in this slide deck, but something that's been pretty popular these days, are people are actually making extracts out of kratom. I suppose there's some merit to it because you don't have to absorb as much plant matter. As we all know, plant matter can be a little hard, you know, especially when you need, if you need a lot of it. So there's some merit to it, but also it's just not recommended. You know, the plant itself is pretty good the way it is. There's no need to take these high dosages and really put yourself in a bad situation. It's just it's not needed.
It's not, I've never really tried extracts, but I think that the big issue with that is it is easier to become dependent when you're taking extracts, and I've read about people having much bigger issues with dependence. But yeah, it seems like just taking the powdered leaf is totally fine and sufficient.
Yeah. All right, next slide, please. These are good examples. It's a lot of words. I'm going to turn around. So we have energy and mood. People take it for anxiety, depression, fatigue, inattention. Jet lag, yeah, that's a big one. Insomnia, obsession.
I think I added one. I've found that it really helps with just like thought loops.
Oh yeah, I've found that it really helps with just being in a thought loop, or like not being able to focus, or like feeling really obsessed about something. I've definitely found that it helps with that. Just lack of focus, things like that.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that one. I love this research.
Which color is that?
This
helps you focus.
I personally use green, like a green mallee. That's kind of my daytime go-to strain, but it does
Green or
vary
white?
with each person too. So it's
Green or white?
yeah.
Digestive disorders. This is a big one for my friend Amalesh, and he'll talk about his story a little more in a minute, but it does help with things like IBD. Slows down your bowels. What does that say? Camping? No. Cramping? Floating? Yeah. Autoimmune and inflammatory disorders. So that's kind of where my situation comes in. It helps a lot. I have arthritis and fibromyalgia. So a lot of people in the autoimmune spectrum can utilize kratom. Yeah. Pain management. I would say post-surgically, it's probably not strong enough. You would still probably get some prescription pain medicine if you're gonna have surgery, but if it's just minor regular pain, back pain, cramps, just your basic, sprain your ankle, things like that, kind of works really well for those types of pains. We got nerve damage, like peripheral neuropathy. It's really good for that. So you can get that, it's nerve problems where like your feet go numb, and it happens a lot with diabetes, but then it also happens with some nerve problems, like nerve diseases. Yeah, you get some like numb and it like burning and pain in your limbs, essentially, peripheral. It doesn't feel good. Addiction and dependence, that's also something that I lean on kratom for. So we found that kratom is an excellent option for opioid withdrawal. I'll go into my story more, but that's another reason why it's so important right now to have this discussion, because it can help a lot of people in that regard. All right, next slide, please. Your map.
Oh, cool. So yeah, this is just a map showing where kratom grows endemically, and then along with the vein colors, the region that the strain comes from also affects the effects that it has on you. So you can sort of think about kratom strains similar to like cannabis strains. It's like a slight variation based on where it came from and all these things. So as you can see, there's Thai and Mangda kratom. These are kind of famous for being the most potent, most like bam, energetic kinds. I wouldn't recommend starting with those ones. I'd recommend starting more with like the green mallee or the Indo and Bali Kratoms. Those are a little bit more just middle of the road. And then you can just kind of experiment with all these other things. Each one has a slight variation, and depending on your own biochemistry, it'll affect you differently. So usually each person has their sort of go-to strains that work with them the best.
I might add, when you do, we'll go into a little more how you obtain it later, but when you do order, a lot of the vendors sell sample packs, so you can get like 8 different kinds to try and see what works for you. You just get small amounts and try them out. And so it's kind of fun. You just get to experiment and see what you relate with. I mean, everyone has a little bit different of experience for different regions. There's a lot of options. It's fun.
Yep. So that's good on that slide. Ooh, okay.
Ooh, okay.
Cool.
All right.
Cool. So next slide. Cool. So Kratom. I'll get into the chemistry. This is just a fun label that we came up, or definition that we came up with for Kratom. So if anyone ever asks you what is Kratom, just tell them it's a psychoactive dietary supplement. And that really is a good way to think of it. Cool, next slide. Awesome. So like we mentioned before, there are over 40 different alkaloids, but honestly I don't think we know a lot about like most of those. We probably have more like a grasp on maybe 10 to 15 of those right now. So there's a lot of research that still needs to be done. But of the ones that we do kind of understand, we know, that like the biggest effect, one of the biggest effects is being an analgesic, being a painkiller. And then other alkaloids in there do things like lower blood pressure, relax smooth and ileal muscles. It's a lot of multiple compounds in there are immunostimulant, so they help your immune system function. I've had a lot of luck taking Kratom when I have a cold or like the flu or something, and it seems to just get rid of it in like a day or two, as opposed to being sick for a week. And like Lauren mentioned, cough suppressant is really effective for that. Mood stabilizing, anti-inflammatory, vasodilating, it expands your blood vessels, and anti-diarrheal. So there's this just very rich host of chemistry going on in a Kratom leaf. So there's a lot of potential even for developing new pharmaceuticals. So cool. Next slide. Cool. So probably the two most well-known compounds in Kratom are called Mytragina and 7-hydroxymitragine, and these are the two compounds which are mostly responsible for the pain-killing effects of Kratom. And Mytragine, I believe, is like a moderate to weak opioid agonist in our brain, and then 7-hydroxy is much more potent. But the concentrations of Mytragine in the leaf are higher than the concentrations of 7-hydroxy. So there's less of the potent stuff in the leaf than the non-potent. So those are the two rock star compounds, if you want to call them that. And then the next, like maybe 15, or next slide, are a little bit more obscure, but also very important in terms of the actual effects of when you take Kratom. So there's adrenaline. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these right, but it has anti-aggregant, and I'm not totally sure what that means, but I feel like maybe it has to do with blood, things aggregating in your blood. Anti-adrenergic, so it's like anti-adrenal, essentially, like anti-stress kind of, sedative, muscle relaxant, anticoagulant to the blood, and then Ciliophyllene, another analgesic, and so yeah, I'll let you guys read these. The most interesting one for me is probably the epicatechin, and maybe you've heard about that before because it's also in chocolate and green tea. It's like the main antioxidant in those things, and so that's also found in Kratom, and really beneficial. And then there were also there was like an anti-cancer, right? Anti-leukemic, yeah. So there is some evidence for that, and then also like antibacterial properties in there. So there's just so much potential for, if we want to like research each individual molecule, there might be a lot of medical potentials that we just haven't discovered yet, I believe.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to synthesize the
Mytragina.
Mytragina.
Yeah.
Just like they did with Marinol, they're trying to take one specific alkaloid and make a new prescription medicine out of it. And their theory is that, we're measuring the doses and it's regulated. But unless you get the full spectrum plan, all the alkaloids working in synergy, it's never going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. Probably not as effective either.
Before you hit next slide, remember what's going to happen here when we hit next slide. We're going to play a video for you.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. Met a Kratom farmer out in Indonesia and just started having a nice conversation with the guy, and like literally has natural plants out in the forest in Indonesia. And he thought it was great that we were talking about Kratom, so he sent me a bunch of videos and we picked this one to share. It's just really cute of the plants growing in their natural habitat. So, you ready? All right, next slide, please. And the video key. Oh, it does not. Well, he looks really happy eating the leaf. He's just eating it off the tree. And he has to wear an LA t-shirt, so I appreciate that too. There it is. It's a huge tree. It's so beautiful. It starts off small and it grows big. And it's out there in the forest right next to the creeks and streams. And then what they do is they harvest the leaves only. So the tree stays intact. They take the leaves off. They lay them out on all these tarps, like probably half an acre of just dried leaves, and let it dry, and then they go through the process to filter out the stems and turn it into powder. Yeah, it's a beautiful plant though. Yeah. I would love to have a leaf and just eat it. Because they look really happy when they do it. And it's like, I'm eating Kratom. All right. Thanks to our friend in Indonesia for sharing his videos. Yeah. He has more. We chose that one.
Yeah, he's actually like a vendor.
Yeah. Good guy, apparently. All right. So, current political situation. I do want to cover this. I'll start this off by just saying that there is a computer sitting in the back with a petition from the American Kratom Association. So if you wouldn't mind on your way out stopping by that computer and giving a signature for the American Kratom Association as we move forward with the process of helping keep Kratom accessible. All right, next slide, please. Yes. So they tried in 2016. I guess we can talk about this together. Might be your slides, but in 2016 it was the DEA, and they went after Kratom hardcore, and there was so much public backlash. All these patients that need it medicinally came forward and were spouting their stories, and I am Kratom. Kratom helps me. Kratom helps my kids. Kratom helps my mom. And everyone spoke up and started protesting, and they didn't schedule it. It really worked. The people spoke up and it worked.
That was the first time that's ever happened with the DA. The DA has like backed down from anything. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. The stories that come forward from this medicine are so powerful, and it gives me goosebumps and tears to just remember the stories I've watched about it.
Yeah, I remember being really freaked out when when this was going down, because I thought it might become illegal, and I was just really worried about my health and what would happen. So I was super glad when it didn't go through.
Absolutely. So everything was pretty peaceful and calm for another year. And then November, believe it or not, now it's all about the FDA.
Yeah.
And they ran a test recently in the last few months, maybe like December. They ran a simulator on the plant that proved that it hits your opiate receptors or opioid receptors.
Which we already knew.
We already knew that, or else it wouldn't help with opioid withdrawal. The way my doctor put it is it tickles your opioid receptors, but it doesn't come in and completely block them like a prescription opioid does. But that was enough based on some random
Just
virtual
based
reality.
on the computer model, essentially, that was modeling human physiology. They were trying to make the case that, you know, all the alkaloids in kratom are opiates, which just really isn't accurate. And they weren't bringing any new information to the table either, because we already knew that mitragynine and 7-hydroxy were opioid-like. But anyways, I mean, it's just the FDA trying to define it as an opiate so that in the public image, people think it's a negative thing.
Yeah, there are some bills right now that are making their way through that say that anything that affects your opioid receptors
Right.
should be Schedule 1.
Right. And
Which is ridiculous. How many other things affect your opioid receptors?
yeah, a lot of
Breast milk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah, it's in breast milk,
chocolate,
chocolate.
eating food, like going on a run, like all these things.
Good conversation.
Sorry?
Good conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Good. No, exactly. So it is, and I think we have that on the next slide.
Probably. Right. good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, they're trying to define it as an opioid. And again, we already knew that mitragynine and 7-hydroxy mitragynine bind to opioid receptors. And chocolate, coffee, cigarettes, milk, exercise, eating food, having sex, watching TV, conversation, all those things also release endogenous or exogenous endorphins or opioid-like substances. So again, it's kind of a just smoke and mirrors thing with the FDA and the DEA, and it seems likely that they are threatened by the idea of kratom because it is it's huge competition for any sort of pain medication, or even things like antidepressants or ADD medication. People could use kratom as an alternative. So I think that's probably what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. They're
and-
using it as an excuse, like if we turn it into a prescription and regulate this one particular alkaloid, at least you know what dose you're getting and it's regulated pharmaceutically and dose-wise. That's their excuse.
Right.
And it's not adulterated and whatnot. But honestly, we don't need that. We don't need them to control our plants.
No, definitely not. And then, so yeah, another thing is, technically, I don't know if you've ever heard of naloxone and naltrexone, but those are essentially like anti-opiate drugs. They do the opposite effect of something like a painkiller, and they're used when people overdose. But technically, those are also opioid medications because they affect those receptors. So again, it's just another example of how that definition doesn't actually necessarily mean anything negative or even like refer to a euphoric drug. So yeah, and then like other even things like ginger, black cohosh, Salvia divinorum. Those are other plants. Those also have opioid activity. So it's kind of it's just an arbitrary definition that they're trying to use for public opinion.
Yeah.
Yep. So the next slide. Exactly. So yeah, that's what that is. Remember, it really is just a fear campaign that Big Pharma must be behind.
Yeah, have to be. When you have, we'll talk more about it, when you have an opioid or opiate addiction and they want you to stop or you want to stop, they give you more opiates. They give you morphine or Suboxone, which are even harder to withdraw from because they have longer half-lives than what we even started with. So it's not working out.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, and again, that's kind of like the same scenario that happened in Thailand 50 years ago, and it's just playing out over and over again. Cool. Next slide.
Oh, I stop. Got it. That's good. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I was trying to find a good infographic about how you can really get the real picture of what a problem this is. I know that the government now has said we're in the opiate crisis, and 26.5 million Americans are addicted to prescription opiates right now. It's a lot of people. And I think it's 42,000, somewhere between 42 and 50, I've heard. And the last count was 2016, died from opioid or opiate overdose, because the prescription opioids cause respiratory depression. They can in too high a volume, and you stop breathing, and that's how a lot of people die. Wow, these numbers are heartbreaking. 2.1 million with an opioid use disorder. When you start taking opioid pain medicine, your body develops a tolerance, and next thing you know, you're taking such high levels of these prescription pain medicines that you can't get enough. It's not touching your pain, and so you take more and you take more, and they stop working, and you take more, and eventually people stop following their doctor's orders, and they find more on the streets, and they may even turn to heroin because they have real pain that needs addressing. You just build this tolerance, and you can get stuck in that cycle and be on them for many years, and if they don't work anymore, it feels like you're not on them. Oh man, it's a lot of deaths, you guys. It's heartbreaking, and it is a crisis. And so we want to point these things out, that there is a natural alternative to try to help with some of this. It's a plant that can help with this, and we want to get the word out. All right, next slide, please. Yeah, I was just saying, the pills cause respiratory depression. I was personally in a situation once where I stopped breathing because I was on too many opioids. So it happens very frequently. That's why they make that Narcan.
Right, naltrexone.
Naltrexone.
Yeah.
Right, so if you're a provider of any sort of psych services or maybe even integration circles, I'm not sure, but we all should be in those positions carrying some of this in the naltrexone. Say son's name, apparently. But it's a spray bottle that you carry around, and if someone's in the middle of an overdose, then you have it at the ready to be prepared to prevent the respiratory depression. So one of the things that the DEA is saying, or the FDA is saying, that there were 36 deaths, I believe, associated with Kratom. But what they failed to mention is that no one actually died just from Kratom. The deaths were associated with other things like suicide, and they just happened to have taken Kratom, or
Yeah, a lot of other things in our system.
Yeah, it was like 45%. 45% of the deaths had Imodium in their system, and 45% had quinine. And both of those are known. People use high doses of Imodium when they're withdrawing from opiate pain medicines. People on the internet say it's okay to take 30 or 40 Imodium to stop your opioid withdrawals. And I got news for you, that's not good for you. Don't take 40 Imodium, please don't take 40. And then don't take it with the Kratom. This is not a good idea all around. But at the end of the day, we do believe it was the Imodium that killed the person, it wasn't the Kratom. So when I was preparing for this presentation, I had read those toxicology reports back in December when they released this information. And when I went to go find it this time, it was really hard to find. They took it offline. The government took it down off all the search engines, like the images. It was extremely difficult to find some analysis of those toxicology reports only 6 months later. But I did find one. It's linked in this this deck if we need it. It's a long Word document that describes every single death and every single toxicology report and what else was in the system. Let's do next slide, because it actually shows some of the other things that were in the system. So absolutely misleading. And if you look at this slide with the 36 kratom deaths, and you look at the other slide with the opioid and the 43,000 people that died from opioids, and they want to ban kratom because of 36 deaths where they had other things in their system, it makes 0 sense. 0. That is, it's dangerous. People die from kratom. We've got to ban it. No, they didn't actually, and now they're hiding that they even said that. So, not cool. So if you're gonna take kratom, maybe don't take 40 Imodium. That might be a good idea. But it's understandable why people might do that. I don't know. So we're here to tell you don't do that.
That's
Yes,
Imodium, right?
that's Imodium. Yeah, that's one of the big word. Yeah, when I saw the toxicology report, it was like every single person had it. It's probably not a good combination, but probably not with like 40 pills like kratom. Yep. All right, let's do next slide, please. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Okay. So I went through about 13 years of chronic pain. And I look healthy, and I was young and not predisposed necessarily to any major chronic disease. So they just passed me off. They're like, you're making it up, you're crazy, we don't believe you, you're in pain. But at some point I found some doctors that did believe me, but all they could do was put me on prescription pain medicine, opioids. I went through the whole gamut. You start off small, you end up big, highest doses of fentanyl, a third more of a prescription of oxymorphone than is recommended. So at some point, again, I was mentioning that when you take it long enough, you end up on super high doses, but you don't even feel like you're taking it and you're not getting any benefits. And so over the years, there were multiple times that I cycled in and out of pain medicine, prescription pain medicine. And there was a few times I had to go to rehab. I had to check myself into rehab because I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't get enough pain medicine, and I was sick from withdrawals in between all the time. And so I asked for help, and I went to rehab, and then I'd go another year or two without, and then my pain would get really bad, and then I'd end up back on pain medicine. And it was just this vicious, awful, vicious cycle. And my last pain medicine doctor worked with me. We found my actual diagnosis, which was autoimmune and psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. And they were giving me these injections of immunosuppressants where you give yourself a shot in your stomach every couple weeks or so. And the side effects of those shots are cancer. Yeah. Lymphoma is a side effect of it, and it kills your immune system, and every time you get on an airplane you could die. So it's very serious, very, very serious, but my doctor at the time told me we don't have long-term research when it comes to these immunosuppressants. I can't tell you what 10 years of these shots is going to look like, but I can tell you what 10 years of opioids is going to look like, and that's a safer option. So next thing you know, I found myself back on the pain medicine train and cycling through them until I was on the highest dosage of the patches, the fentanyl patches and everything else, until finally, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to take the shots. I don't want to take any pain medicine. I want to come at this a different way. I started to understand the human body's healing mechanisms. I started researching mindfulness. I started joining chronic pain groups, started studying radical remissions and all of these interesting new sciences, and found myself in less and less pain. It's pretty miraculous. Now I'm in 100% remission, honestly. I take 0 prescription pain medicines, or 0 prescription medicines at all. 0. I had a whole bag of pills, just a big bag I would just carry it around with me of all these pill bottles of everything that you need, steroids and thyroid, and it was a lot. So at some point my pain started going down, and I wanted to get off the pain medicine, and I was determined as all get out. I moved out to California. It was like a nightmare trying to find another doctor that could just give me enough pain medicine so that I could stop taking pain medicine. And I was super sick, so I went through this like 4-month taper process with the pain medicine, and every time I would go down each month I would feel very sick for an entire month. So essentially I was sick and not feeling well or doing anything for 4 months, last January to April. So I finally got to the point where I tapered, stopped at the beginning of April last year, and I was sick. Even with all the tapering, it was like kicking heroin. It was terrible, like your legs flail and your stomach's cramping and your back hurts and you got a fever and you're so irritated. You do not want to be around anybody, you'll just yell at them. You don't sleep I didn't sleep for about 3 months, more than 2 hours a night. So it was awful to go through. And at some point my friend's like, have you tried Kratom? I was like, no, I've never even heard of Kratom. This was last April. And she happened to have some, and she gave me a little bit, and it was immediate. Like 30 minutes later, I just felt such huge relief. And I'm like, what is this plant? You know? And I had so much guilt. Like, am I cheating? Is this cheating? Because you take all of this plant, and all of a sudden you're like not dying anymore, you know? So I involved my doctor. I did. I involved my pain medicine doctor in Long Beach, and he did some research, and he said, absolutely take it. He goes, I wouldn't take it like all the time, like give yourself some breaks, try not to overdo it. I was like, are my receptors having a hard time? Like, is this gonna take me longer in the long run? Like, am I doing something wrong? Am I cheating? And he said, no, take it when you need it. And it's just tickling the receptors. It's not delaying your healing process. And still, I was still hesitant to take enough of it, because when you're in the opiate withdrawal, you really want to take every 4 hours, Kratom every 4 hours, and a bunch of it, like a couple of teaspoons to tablespoons of Kratom every 4 hours when you start to feel the withdrawals coming back. But it was a miracle, and looking back, I wish that I would have leaned on it even more. But I felt like I was doing something wrong. I didn't have a huge community to assist me with that. So there are some Facebook groups that were very helpful to me. There was Kratom Recovery from Opiates on Facebook, which was helpful at the time. And some other side groups that I was involved in. And you can ask questions and have support groups online, which is really useful. Looking forward, remission, 0 prescription medicine. I really slowed down on the Kratom maybe last fall. Like, I just started tapering as I felt better after about 6 weeks of no pain medicine. And then I realized I was just taking like a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon in my coffee in the morning for the last 3 or 4 months. And something that's occurred to me over the last couple of weeks is that I don't even need to do that. It's amazing. So start to finish, really, like, that's a year-long process. Yeah, I could have cut it off, but I still wasn't feeling 100% solid to completely go without anything yet. And if that took me a year, it took way longer than a year to get into that situation. You know, that took 10 years of bad decisions and desperation to get into it. So I will absolutely take a year and be grateful that it took a year to get out of it like that. So I will continue to utilize Kratom when I have cramps or back pain, or maybe I didn't get enough sleep or something like that. But yeah, I graduated. That's my story. Thank you so much. All right. Next slide, it's Amlesh's story.
All right, cool. So my story is a little bit different than Lauren's, although it both start with prescription pain medication. So I started just sort of recreationally taking pain medication when I was in college, and one of my roommates had like prescriptions for all these things because he had a lot of issues. So he would give me them and I would try them and we would have fun, and then eventually it did turn into more of like a dependence. So I was like pretty dependent on tramadol for about a year, maybe 6 months to a year. And then we graduated college, and you know, we were like, that relationship was going to end, and so I was like, well, my habit's going to end, and I was feeling a little bit worried about that. And then at the time, I was also suffering a lot of like severe back pain, I remember, and digestive issues were starting to come up for me. And so I was just doing research, looking into stuff, and I remember looking online and seeing stuff about Kratom. And so I looked into it. read that it hits opioid receptors, read that people have been using it for withdrawals, all these things. So I decided to try some. I ordered it, and then I tried some, and I remember it took me like a couple weeks, even in the beginning, to really like feel like I liked it and feel like it was affecting me in a good way. But once I found that, it was like, you know, none of the pills that I had taken before even seemed attractive anymore. It was like the effects that I got from Kratom were way better than anything I could get from a pill. So that was really a huge shift for me, and that was really cool to figure out. But then, you know, over the next couple of years, I definitely developed like a hardcore Kratom addiction, I would say. And not that that's like anywhere as near as problematic as a serious opiate addiction. It was still very much a dependence, and I was coping with a lot of issues, a lot of pain that I didn't really want to confront head on at the time, just because I was in denial about things and just not ready. And so in that sense, the Kratom really helped me just like stay functioning as a human and like keep a job and be able to like trudge through the pain I was experiencing without completely losing everything I had. So I'm super grateful for it in that regard. But you know, I definitely went through a couple of years where I was like very addicted to Kratom itself, and that was challenging for sure. And I've gone through multiple periods where I've gone through withdrawal from Kratom, and that can be difficult too. But again, it's just nowhere near as severe as a prescription for something like heroin. So I guess currently my story is I'm still dependent on it. But in the last year or so, I have been cutting back a lot, and I've been exploring more psychedelic modalities as a way to transition from dependence into more of a healthy relationship. And again, it's not that I'm condemning my like dependent use. It's just not something that I want for the rest of my life, if that makes sense. But I am still using it for a medical condition, which is a digestive issue, which I've had for maybe a good like 5-6 years. And so it's been just amazingly helpful for that, for helping with like daily diarrhea and pain and inflammation and all that stuff. It's just been like Kratom and cannabis have been complete lifesavers. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I absolutely love Kratom, and I'm so glad that it exists, and I really hope it stays legal. But yeah, I mean, there were times in the past where I've gone through a lot of shame about it too, just because of, you know, what society says at large about addiction, what my parents have told me, what my friends have told me, the attitudes and everything. And so it's been like this, you know, over the last 30 years, it's been this constant like, well, is Kratom good? Is this okay? Kind of similar to Lauren, it's like feeling all this shame about doing something which is actually good for you and medicinal. And so I guess I just want to share that for anyone else who's in a similar position. It's like to try not to internalize that shame, because it really does just fuel the addiction even more. And most of the time, you're just trying to help yourself, you know? So, yeah, and again, just being able to share about this is also really helpful in that regard, and just like bringing it out in the open, so.
Yeah, bring it up.
Thank you all for listening.
Put it behind us. We still have a few more slides about how to administer it and dosage. What time? How are we doing on time?
You guys will finish last.
Okay. Next slide, please. These are our warnings. Basically, we were just talking about dependence. Like I said, I've taken like a quarter to a half a teaspoon at a time. It's really not much. So I haven't had any physical dependence myself since last summer. You know, when I was taking very high dosages or higher higher, in my opinion, is like 2 tablespoons every 4 hours. Which, when you're coming off of opioids or you're treating a serious medical condition, that's probably a pretty basic dosage. But when you're at those dosages, you will develop some tolerance and you will develop some dependence. It's like if you drink coffee all day and then you stop drinking coffee. You're going to have some side effects. So ideally, just like anything else, you would taper down. They also have, it's called stem and vein, where it's not the leaf part of the kratom, it's just the stem and the vein, where it touches the same receptors and so helps where you don't have withdrawal symptoms and just resets your tolerance. And you don't feel anything from it, but it's just kind of like a filler to help you step down. So that is also a tool that's available, and you can get that. Strain rotation. So they say that you should change your strains out. You shouldn't take the same strain every day or all day. You should change them up. So you don't. It helps to maintain no tolerance. Yeah, I guess your receptors get saturated if it's the same thing all the time.
Some work, some don't.
For some people.
Yeah, you're saying some of them don't work for you? Okay, yeah, if you could find like 1 or 2 or like 3 that do work and then just rotate those out. The thing is, if you're using one strain every day, your body just gets used to it and it builds a tolerance up more quickly. But if you can rotate them out, then your body's less able to develop a tolerance as quickly.
Yep, absolutely. Tolerance breaks. So I was doing weekend tolerance breaks. So I would take it in the morning during the week if I was having a bad pain day, sometimes in the evening. But then I would stop on the weekends. And I didn't really feel any side effects, but it felt like the right thing to do because I never did feel like I had too much of a tolerance. The medicine was still working during the weeks. So that was a good schedule for me. Some people take breaks just monthly. That might work. Some people take that stem and vein on a monthly basis for 3 or 4 days. So just in general, though, taking those tolerance breaks is always a good idea. Right, so you can't overdose on kratom. It doesn't cause the respiratory depression. What happens if you take too much kratom is you get the wobbles. You just are kind of wobbly and then you vomit. So it could be worse, right? That's it.
Then you pass out for 12 hours.
You throw up. People are scared of throwing up, but honestly, that's a very good, healthy overdose reaction. It makes you super thirsty. So drink more water, drink more water, drink more water. You can't help it, you're just very thirsty. So always have your water on you, and they do say that some people do get a little bit higher liver enzyme levels. So definitely if you already have liver problems, it's just something you probably want to watch as you take the kratom, like get your liver panels checked. And then also drink lots of water. Did I mention that?
Yeah.
More water.
Also,
Right.
if you don't drink enough water, you'll wake up with a headache for sure.
Yes, you can get headaches, and some strains give headaches a little more too. And I notice if I don't eat as well, if I don't have a lot of food on board, I can get the headache.
Yeah, totally. Or you
It's not
get
good.
nauseous.
Mhm.
So it's good to take it with food.
That's a bad headache too. Yeah, it's not fun. Drink more water. And then don't drink alcohol. Like don't do the things that are gonna make you more thirsty with the kratom, in my opinion. Don't go to the desert and be like, I'm gonna take some kratom in the desert and bring 1 thing of water. Not a good idea. And then something that came to my attention recently was that I talked to someone about kratom and ayahuasca, and we went back and forth and did a lot of research on the internet. At the end of the day, we both came to the verdict that you really should abstain from kratom for 72 hours before ayahuasca ceremonies. Yeah. We found that, ayahuasca definitely purges whatever is in your system fast. By the end of the ceremony, you detoxified a lot of these things that are in your body, and so when you push these types of substances out of your body really quickly, it can be a little bit severe. Right, so, and you want like a super clean, energetic experience going into an ayahuasca ceremony, so just a suggestion is to abstain for 72 hours. All right, next slide, please. I thought this was a good little graphic on what is light, how many times a day. So in my opinion, 1 to 3 grams, which is about a quarter to a half a teaspoon. It could even be up to a teaspoon. I think 3 grams is a teaspoon.
Oh, a teaspoon?
Yeah.
No, that's like one.
One, yeah.
A tablespoon would be one.
3 teaspoons. Okay. 1 to 2 times a day. Kratom lasts about 4 to 5 hours. And so if you're in a heavy situation, like you're coming off of a heroin addiction, you're going to want to take it every 4 hours or whenever you start feeling the side effects. And you're going to need 2 or 3 tablespoons of Kratom every 4 or 5 hours. And then as you work through the process every day or 2, you start cutting down and start tapering down, 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 and get as low as you can go. But you're going to start off with quite a bit, and that's okay. And they say if you're still having withdrawal symptoms and you're taking Kratom, take more Kratom. Yeah, it'll work. You're just going to need quite a bit to start with. So if you ever are counseling somebody or helping them with this, just make sure that they go into their withdrawal with a good supply. You know, it's not very expensive, so you just want to get a lot, like a whole kilogram. You know, maybe split it to 2 different strains or something, a red and a green, or a red and a white. But you don't want to run out. They do sell it at head shops, but that's also not recommended. It's not a pure leaf blend. A lot of the times they have extracts in them. It's also really expensive. So just the powdered form we find is really the best way to go. And we did find one store in LA that's called Kratom CBD, and it's, where was it? It was like
It's like
on the east side?
Felix.
Los Felix?
It's North Hollywood.
Somewhere over there. So there's actually a store that does sell the powdered version of Kratom in LA.
It's expensive though.
I bet, and it's not very expensive on the internet. All right, next slide, please. So here's a few ways to take it. I'm more of the tea kind of girl myself. Boiling leaves is still a little bitter for me. I've had that bag, but I pass around forever. I just can't do it. Some people put lemon because it potentiates it. But I also do apple juice, orange juice, peach juice, whatever. Cocoa, hot cocoa is my very go-to. It's super easy because you just hot water a little cocoa powder and a little bit of Kratom, and it's easy to drink and it's warm and soothing. That's kind of my deal. And then the coffee is also my deal. Toss and wash. I had a few good toss and wash experiences, but then I had a bad one and I just can't go back there. But essentially you take the powder and you put it on your tongue, like you put a little liquid in there and then you put it on your tongue and then you just shoot it back with water.
Swish it around and then.
Right. And if it's way on the back of your tongue and you do that, you can't really taste it, is the theory, and it gets down fast so you don't need any sugary juice or something, which is ideal. But one time I inhaled it.
Yeah.
Respiratory infection.
Yeah, I was really
Yeah,
I was
really bad.
not good. It was not good for me, and so I just have not had the courage to retry
Yeah.
the toss and wash method. But it's the best way to go if you can do it.
Yeah, that's my go-to.
Yeah, not me. Capsules, you can buy those little capsule machines on Amazon and just fill them up and get the big capsules and just make a bunch of them. They recommend that you poke holes in them so that when you do swallow, that the capsules dissolve and the medicine breaks down easier. But we have found that capsules are just not as effective. It doesn't work as well as just drinking the powder. You need more. Rice film paper, so they're like these oblate discs that you can buy. They're little circles, and you just get it wet, and you put the powder in there, and you fold it over like a little dumpling, and then you swallow it. You get it wet, so it's slippery, and you swallow it. So that also seems like a better option than tossing them.
How is that different from the capsules?
I think the film, like the rice paper film or whatever, dissolves more easily than the vegetable capsules. Oh, baking. Yeah, people make like baked goods and little Reese's peanut butter cups out of it, and they freeze them in little popsicles. I mean, people get really creative with it. Honey balls is another thing. They call them honey balls. They take honey and the Kratom and chopsticks and make these little balls out of it and swallow them. And then transdermal. We wanted to point out that's transdermal in there, and then also eating the leaves, which we don't get to do, but that's what we want to do. All right, next slide, please. Oh, this is the last slide. We just wanted to put a few resources up here. We do have that station in the back if you wouldn't mind signing the petition for the American Kratom Association. They're on Facebook. You can follow them for the latest news. They have a lot of scientists, and they have their old panels of, this sounds really bad, but old panels of old white men that are up there fighting the old panels of old white men on the FDA. So do what we can to support them. They're super smart, and they're doing the work. They also have social media campaigns. They have one that's like I am Kratom, hashtag I am Kratom, where people are telling their stories all over YouTube. So we want to support them where we can. Amalesh and I watched this video, this interview with Chris Bell. He's interviewed with Lance Armstrong, and this one in particular was really powerful, where he was speaking on behalf of Kratom. He lost his brother to opioids, and so he's a huge advocate. Joe Rogan's a big advocate for Kratom. Chris Bell's creating a movie. What was it called?
Oh yeah, that's right. A Leap of Faith.
A Leap of Faith. That comes out this summer. So let's support him where we can. Just cited a couple government articles here. And then our friend in Indonesia, we just wanted to say his Kratom ACH is his forest. So Aceh. You don't pronounce anything. We're trying to know.
Mytragina.
Yes. All right, so that's the end of our slides. It's fun. I really enjoyed that.
And we're going to end off with having a little bit of a creative, just settling back into our body, because that was a lot of information. And so we like to end our events with just something a little bit, more creative. So I'm thrilled to invite up Sky, who is a dear, dear friend of mine. And I haven't gotten to see this portion of your talented self. So she's going to play a little bit of music. I'm thrilled to see it and thrilled to share it with you. So please give a round of applause to Sky.
Take a deep breath in. Sigh out. Beautiful. Another deep breath, feeling the whole body expand. Filling that body with air and sighing out. And maybe a little wiggle. Nice. It's always so beautiful to hear information and be able to receive in that way. And a lot of the medicine that I've received in my life has been through sound and vibration and movement of the body. I'm a body worker, and sound as medicine is part of my practice. So I'd love to share a little bit of medicine with you all this evening that is not scheduled in any way other than starting now. And so I invite you to close your eyes if you feel called, to really connect to that breath as it comes in and out of your body, and receive the vibration as it moves you and fills you. sing my gratitude to the earth beneath my feet. You teach me how to grow. You give me all I need. I sing my gratitude to the wind blowing through the leaves. You teach me to let go and how to use my wings. I sing my gratitude to the waters, to the waves from whence we came. You teach me how to flow, and now we're all the same. I sing my gratitude to the fire burning bright. You teach me to transmute by turning on my light. I sing my gratitude to the light, to the heart that lies within. You teach me how to be and to love who I've been.
Thank you.
Listen to the sound. Can you hear it? Listen to the call of the one great spirit. Listen to the sound. Can you hear it? Listen to the call of the one great spirit. Listen to the sound. Can you hear it? Listen to the call of the one great spirit. Sound can heal us. Sound within us. Sound can heal our souls within us. Can you feel it now? Sisters, brothers, can you feel the pulse of our sacred mother? Can you feel it now? Sisters, brothers, can you feel the pulse of our sacred mother? Sound can heal us, sound within us. Sound can heal our souls within us. I'd like to end with a short blessing to each of you as we carry this medicine out into the world within us through our interactions. May your feet
kiss the ground they walk upon. May your heart always know the path it's destined to be on. May your hands do the work that's meant to be, as we co-create a new reality. May your soul know its depths as it takes flight. May your love never need a reason why. May your light inspire purpose in all who dare to see, as we do the work that heals humanity, and we walk in noble service to the Queen.